Today we're going to be making pins, or you could call them brooches, for gifts, or you can even make it for yourself. And this is an example of one that came from England. And these are porcelain pins or brooches. You can see how it has a pin back on it. This one is actually pretty small. It's just a little over about 1.25 inches. And it has these delicate little handmade flowers on it, you can see. And then there's these little leaves on the back. See how the leaves form? It's like a little bouquet. And this is a great gift to give for Mother's Day, or whoever takes care of you, or to just keep it for yourself. You can also make it as a magnet if you don't want to use it as a pin. And this one was made in England, and this is what inspired me, because my grandmother used to have pins like this, and then my mother had one, and then I happened to see this at a resale store, and so I picked this up. But when I went over to actually Europe, I saw, when I went to look at some of the graves, they had these porcelain flowers just like this in bigger form on actually the graves. So they have been using, and those were graves from the mid 1800s. So they've been making these porcelain flowers like this for a long time on the graves, and using them as, instead of putting real flowers on the graves, they use these porcelain flowers, and it's amazing how some of them are still intact. But we're going to be taking this idea of making porcelain flowers, and this is actually done in what's a bone china, and we're going to be using white clay today to make our own brooches or pins. Here's some examples here, and you can do them as fancy as you'd like and as many as you like. So say if you only have time for one flower cluster, that's fine too. So it's up to you how you want to do it. But the first step is to do this. We're going to be taking our clay, and the size I give you is about 1 inch to 1.25 inches round if you were to make it into a round ball. This would fit inside a toilet tissue tube or a paper towel tube, this size shape easily. But we go ahead and take the clay, and this is ceramic clay. This clay will need to be what's called fired in a kiln. This will need to be fired. You could also use, if you're doing this at home, you could also use air dry clay, or what makes it even more permanent is a resin-based clay that you can order on the internet. But for our purpose, we're going to be firing this in the kiln, very similar to this kind of bone clay. So take your ball of clay and just break it in half. Pinch it in half. Now, when I pinched it in half roughly, it's not exact. I want you to take the smaller of the two pieces, if there is a smaller one. As you see, these are pretty small pins here. And ours will end up being about this big, which is about 1.5 inches big. So we're going to take this. Now with this kind of clay, the more you touch this clay, the drier it becomes, and dry clay is bad, no good. Dry clay is no good for us. And today I have some third graders here who are going to be making these for a Mother's Day gift, and we are taping live. So they will be helping me today. So you take this clay and you're going to be rolling, and I call it a 2-second roll. You put it in the palm of your hand and go 1, 2, and you're done. The more you touch it, the drier it becomes. You'll feel the moisture here. And then we're going to be putting this on just a paper towel and press. And one quiet press is all it should do. It'll flatten it out enough. Now if you want to flip it over and press it a little bit in the center, if your center is not as thin, if you have a wide center, you can. Just a few presses in the center, but one is pretty much enough. And Then we're going to start forming these flowers. Now, we just take a small pinch off. Now, if you were to measure on your pinky finger, look, and it's about the size of a little bit bigger than a pea. You can even make it smaller than a pea. But that's all the piece I took out, a real small pinch, and roll it real quickly into a ball, and then go back and forth. And this makes a cone. See that? This could be one of the petals right here, and then press down if you want to make a petal like that. If you want a rounded, so that's a pointier petal. If you want a rounded, like these little pansies, these are actually pansy flowers. So you would take a very small amount of clay, roll it, and press it real skinny. Now, with this particular clay, the ceramic clay that we're using, you have to barely touch these small pieces. I don't play with my extra clay. I leave it off to the side. By touching and playing it, it dries it out, and then it becomes no good. So I pull my little piece off, roll it in a 2-second ball, and then flatten it quickly. And then we're going to start forming, and you need about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 5 of these. And we're going to start forming those tiny petals. There's 3, and you notice it only takes a few seconds. Roll, and then press. You see how small that is? It's very small. There's my 4. Now one more. Roll. 2-second roll. Press. It's really small. It's about as wide as your pinky finger nail. And then we're just going to cluster it together. And you can kind of cup them if you want, and to form our little petals, our flower petals. So I'm kind of cupping them and pinching them, and decide where you want it. I'm just going to put this one in the center because I'll make one flower. And when you place it in the center, if you press down in the middle, you can use your finger, press, or you can use a tool, or the great standby, a pencil. Just take your pencil, here's a dull pencil, just press the center, and that way these two pieces of clay bond together. So I'm just cupping this around each petal, pressing the middle down. This is important because you want the clay to bond with. So you put the petal where you want it and just give it a little press in the middle. That's kind of cute like that with only 4 petals. So, but you can decide if you want 4 or 5. Here's just the last one. I'm sticking it in the middle and pressing. Now I'm going to tap, and I'll show you how to do this. I'm tapping several times in the center just to make sure that's sealed good. And there's my little pansy, or actually you can even make it look like a rose. You can move it around the way you like. Now I'm going to use the one I made in the beginning. Look at this. See this long one with the point? I'm going to use this one I made as a leaf. And I'm going to attach it. Now I don't want this tiny area to hang off. So I'm just going to kind of bend it so it's attached. And then with a sharper pencil, or actually you can use a paper clip or a wood tool that looks like a pencil. If you have any wood tools, I'll show you with a paper clip. If you just open up your paper clip, I can carve in, press this in, and just press, press, press. Some girl made this like this the other day, and this almost looks like a fern, or it's the veins of the leaves. See how I've done that? So there's my single one. If you want to make a rose, like the example here, See how I twisted this? It's the same thing as this pansy. If you want to make the rose center, this is an open rose. You take your piece of clay, remember, barely touch, roll, press it into a very thin little, I call it a patty, and then just roll your edges. You curl this together. And this can form the center of your rose. If you take your pencil, you can even poke down the middle. See that? And that forms the center of the rose. And I cut, if I'm going to put it in the center here, I just slice it off because I just want the curled rolled piece. And then I can set that right in my center, and that could turn my pansy into a rose. Now if you take your paper clip, just kind of sealing your edges lightly, that'll help secure that in there so that won't fall out. And there's actually the pansy that turned into a rose. And you can continue building this up all around your edges. Now let's look at this example here. This is a really small little tiny flower, kind of like a bluebonnet or a violet. That, if you just take your little piece of clay, again, everything is clay, pinch, roll it in a tiny ball. I can flatten this into a patty. I can press this in the middle here. This is a tiny little one, watch. Take my pencil, press right in. That forms a little delicate flower right there. You can even make your pressing your clay in on your edges to form your individual petals if you'd like. If you want to make tiny, delicate flowers around here. So it's basically just your little tiny ball, flattened. You can cup it. You can even press in tools like this. This can wrap around the pencil end. Whoops, that kind of got messed up a little. So I take my flat patty, wrap it around the pencil. That makes it a little cupped flower right here. And I can attach it. Take the pencil tool. As long as it's bonded to the background, you're good. And look at that. That can be a little tiny flower. Now, I wouldn't just put one of the same. I would do it in clusters because just that one guy kind of looks funny, one of everything. So do your little round ball again. Take your pointed pencil, wrap it around your pencil, and give a little push, and there it almost looks like a buttercup. There's your little buttercup. And then you can add little tiny leaves to it if you'd like. And that's basically how you would do your pin. Filling in all the rest. This one's not colored yet. We haven't painted these yet. There's roses, there's little leaves. Here's some little buttercup tubes, leaves. And I'll show you on this because we can really see good on this one. And have fun making your little Mother's Day brooch or pin. Pendant, pin, brooch, those are all the same things that we pin on our shirt collars.